Because we get told in the 7th chapter of the book of Daniel. He said, "After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and broke in pieces and stomped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns." A little later we read, "Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass. Which devoured and broke in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet." Well, I'm going to show you what that is. What you guys are looking at is a foot-long piece of shrapnel. Yeah, that is a big, giant iron tooth. That's what it is. Sure is. Comes from, basically, let's see here. Comes from one of these guys. Yeah. A big general purpose iron bomb. Yeah, that's right. A big general purpose iron bomb. And there hasn't much changed with these things since they first started getting used in mass in World War II. Yeah, you didn't consider that, did you? See, they've told you stories and fairy tales about Satan flying around in a UFO, and Satan, you know, being a fallen angel in the Garden of Eden, and Satan being this and Satan being that. They've told you guys a bunch of wives' fables. Because when we do things like this, that's what Satan is right there. I just want you to know. That's a lot of death and destruction. And it ain't always, and don't let them kid you, it's not happening to soldiers, by and large. These things are falling on people. People that are, they're just doing what their government's telling them to do. And that's what was going on here. Do you see that? Do you realize all that's iron? Yeah. And you remember the big piece of shrapnel I just showed you? Yeah. I'm going to give you an idea here of just how much destruction something like that causes. What you're looking at right there, those are B-29s. And I want to read you a little story for a minute about the firebombing of Tokyo. Yeah, so on the night of March 9th, 1945, U.S. warplanes launch a new bombing offensive against Japan, dropping 2,000 tons of incendiary bombs on Tokyo. Over the course of the next 48 hours, almost 16 square miles in and around the Japanese capital were incinerated. Yeah, and between 80,000 and 100,000 Japanese civilians were killed in the worst single firestorm in recorded history. See, the previous one had been Dresden, yeah, which I'll show you some pictures of that. That had some awful stories that I had to read about, and it's pretty bad. Speed would be crucial, and the crews were warned that if they were shot down, all haste was to be made for the water, which would increase their chances of being picked up by American rescue crews. Should they land within Japanese territory, they could only expect the very worst treatment by civilians as, well, what do you think the civilians would treat them that way for? Yeah, so they were told ahead of time. They could only expect the very worst treatment by civilians, as the mission that night was going to entail the deaths of tens of thousands of those very same civilians. So again, these airmen, these boys, yeah, at the time, that their pastors had told them probably because a lot of these people went to church. These different country back then. They were told by their pastors and priests here in the United States that they were doing the right thing, that God was on the U.S. side. So when they got fronted with this, when that confronted them, and they could expect the worst treatment, they were told all this ahead of time. They went ahead and did it anyways. I don't know if there was any court-martials of any of the pilots, but that would have been it for me right there. Most likely. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe, the peer pressure and all of it, I might have participated in it too. I don't know. I shouldn't say that. I would hope not. At least I know I wouldn't now. I don't know. Maybe when I was 19 or 20 years old, maybe I'd have done something awful like that. I don't know. But they were told, you're going to be murdering civilians tonight. And this was ahead of time. The cluster bombing of the downtown Tokyo suburb of Shitamachi had been approved only a few hours earlier. Shitamachi was composed of roughly 750,000 people. This is a big place for 45. Living in cramped quarters in wooden-framed buildings. See, when they firebombed Dresden, it was bad enough. I mean, the streets caught on fire. That's people literally sank into the asphalt as Dresden was burning. And they cut off their avenues of escape. That was the most disgusting part of that, was them freaking, destroying these people's ability to get out of the city first and then doing it. Anyways, yeah. Setting ablaze the paper city was a kind of experiment. Oh, an experiment. These were scientists now. In the effects of firebombing, it would also destroy light industries called shadow factories that produce prefabricated war materials destined for the Japanese aircraft factories. And that was their reasoning behind it. The Denzians of Shitamachi never had a chance defending themselves. Of course they didn't. They were confronted with that fourth beast that was exceeding dreadful. Yeah, their fire brigades were hopelessly undermanned, poorly trained, and poorly equipped. At 5:34 p.m., Superfortress B-29 bombers took off from Saipan and Tinian, reaching their target at 12:15 a.m. on March 10th. 334 bombers, flying at mere 500 feet, dropped their loads, creating a giant bonfire that fanned 30-knot winds and helped raise Shitamachi and spread flames throughout Tokyo. Masses of panicked and terrified Japanese civilians scrambled to escape. Yeah, the inferno, most unsuccessful. The human carnage. I want you to read this. This is what the pilots in the second wave encountered, and this is why I'm reading it to you. The second wave pilots encountered this. The human carnage was so great that blood-red mists and the stench of burning flesh that wafted up sickened the bomber pilots. This was the second flights that came in behind the first crews, sickened the bomber pilots, forcing them to grab oxygen masks to keep from vomiting. So, I don't need to read anything else concerning that. That's what you're seeing right there. That's what those planes were doing. Yeah, that's what they were dropping. And that's just one type of those big iron bombs that they had. Yeah. These were the things they were going around the world doing. That's Dresden before. Yeah. That's the Dresden bombing, the night from the air. They're way up in the air. Yeah. This is them starting the inferno. Yeah. And that's Dresden after. Now, see, they had a lot of I can't even imagine Tokyo. I guess they don't show pictures because there was no way of taking them after. I don't know. there was nothing left, apparently. It was basically a paper and wood city, and it was, I mean, hundreds of thousands of people died, most likely as a result of that. We will never know. The official estimates here, you'll never get an official estimate. You know, the authorities will say, oh, it was only 25,000. At the time, they were saying over 250,000. That's what they were saying, just so you guys understand. They had, that city was packed full of people. They had one of the biggest circuses, apparently, at the time in that city. They had refugees. These weren't just Germans, by the way. These were Poles, Russians who were anti-Soviet. You had, I'm sure, Ukrainians. You had all kinds of people who, they weren't fleeing the German army. These people were fleeing the Red Army, because the Red Army, by this point, had already started going on a raping campaign that apparently we knew all about here. We didn't have a problem with. In the eastern parts of, eastern, you know, in Poland and then on into Germany, they didn't care. You know, these people were mad. They wanted blood back. You know, they had the Germans come into their country, and it was payback time now. So, and it was being fanned, that stuff, from the very top down. Stalin's head propaganda guy was telling them it's okay, you know, to go rape the women and kill every, you know, civilian you come across. It's your right as a Soviet soldier, you know, for what they've done. So my point is, the city Dresden was packed with refugees. You know, the audacity of a place to do something like this, and then to do it on basically a Catholic holiday. That's what they chose. They chose because, again, remember, you guys, it's Freemasons against the Catholic. Old Mystery Babylon versus the new Mystery Babylon. You know, it was, you know, old school Rome, Roman Catholic Church versus the new Rome, you know, with the Freemasons here, right? So this was their message to them. And it was done on the feast, you know, the Catholic Feast of Love or whatever. That's where you get Valentine's Day from. So, yeah, I'm guessing maybe they wanted to send a message, you know, we're breaking your heart or whatever. It's disgusting and awful. But that's what it was. And if you want exceeding dreadful, well, the things that could do stuff like this, that's what I would consider. That's other German cities. I think that's Hamburg, if I'm not mistaken. You know, these are the ruins of them. You know, when Patton said the 3rd Army and the 8th Air Force went to so many towns, I mean, he gave a famous speech once, and he said, I can't pronounce all of them, but a lot of them aren't here anymore. He was talking about the towns. You know, people laugh about that, but this is literal. You know, these towns don't exist. You know, the cities stopped existing, some of them. Yeah. The Korean War. Yeah, same thing. There you go. Remember? Exceedingly dreadful. Great iron teeth. What do you think that is? That's the great iron teeth. That's what you're looking at. Yeah, your pastor's lied to you. Vietnam, the great iron teeth. There they are. And before we go any further, just to give you an idea of the destructive power that are in these things.
We use data taken at the rate.
Here's some scientists from Reading University, aerospace engineers. Here, listen to them tell you about World War II. Those you think the atomic, I mean, we're not even getting to the atomic bomb here yet. We're just talking about the regular bombing that we did.
We used data taken at the Radio Research Station in Ditton Park near Slough to look at changes to the Earth's ionosphere during the Second World War. The ionosphere is the electrified part of the Earth's upper atmosphere, and it's created when X-rays and extreme ultraviolet light from the sun are absorbed by the atmosphere and electrifies it. Now, the work at Slough was routinely measuring the height and the intensity of these layers to understand how they vary. But what they didn't realise at the time was that they actually contained the signatures of the actual war itself.
The Allies, and especially the RAF, started heavy bombing of German cities around about 1942-43, and by the end of the war they were capable of dropping maybe 2,000 tons in one single raid.
And we can see that the bombing of the European cities actually weakened the ionosphere 1,000 kilometres away above the UK.
What we get with these readings is...
Did you guys hear that? He said the bombing of German cities weakened the ionosphere over the United Kingdom over 1,000 kilometers away. We're not even talking about atomic bombs here, guys. I mean, what they dropped in World War II on those cities compared to the amount of energy released in a bomb, in one of the A-bombs, is nothing. Maybe there are consequences. Maybe God's trying to send you a message right here.
Bit of scientific detective work which allows us a glimpse at not just what was happening on the ground, but the effects of bombing at the edge of space.
So nevertheless, you can carry right on to Vietnam with this, yeah? It's the same thing. It's that great iron teeth. It's exceeding dreadful. What in the world do you think is more dreadful than that? Did you literally think that God's talking about like a dragon coming up out of the ocean? Like a physical monster? Is that what you guys seriously think he's saying? Aren't any physical monsters more scary than something like that. What dragon more scary? So tell me, you know? What great iron teeth? There's your iron teeth right there. The general purpose iron bomb that's used in everything we've got, from the expensive laser guided stuff to the cheap JDAMs. All they do is just retrofit all of this stuff with a little bit of like controls. It's the same iron teeth. Nothing's changed. That's your monster right there. Here's your dragon. This is your beast right here. You're living in it. Yeah. And that's the way God looks at us. That's exceeding dreadful right there. That's what we've went around the world. That's what we've shown people about Jesus Christ. Do you understand? This is what we've shown them. We've brought freedom to them. That's what they told us. That's what we've been doing, right? I mean, that's what my family must have come here to do, all those years ago, right? They weren't here to, go and be left alone. They were here to make sure we brought freedom to everybody all over the planet, That's a lot of freedom right there we were dropping. And make no bones about this, guys. Russia would do the same thing. China would do the same thing. Iran would do the same thing. Any of these other countries would do the same thing that we've done if they had the opportunity. My point is they didn't. We did. And God's people, rather than being horrified, supposedly, by this behavior, rather than being horrified with it, we've encouraged it apparently in our groups. You guys don't understand. God ain't got nothing to do with this stuff. Jesus Christ of Nazareth has nothing to do with this. This ain't God making war. This is a God making war. And that God is the United States. And the little man that pretends to be in charge of it, or group of men that think they're in charge of it. It's a God little g. It's not God. And that's not God making war. But my problem is, the synagogue of Satan, because that's what you've got in the King James Version, right? Well, it just means congregation, assembly. It's not talking about, the Orthodox synagogue down the road necessarily with these Talmudists. The synagogue of Satan that he's referring to there is your local church house supporting this kind of stuff right here. That's what the synagogue of Satan is. If you're in a church that supports this kind of stuff, well, that's where you're at. I don't care what excuse they give you. You've been shown now some of it. You haven't seen it all. I know you're probably still thinking, nah, this can't be, and that's fine. fine enough, because this isn't shocking enough for you. I understand, we're Greeks here, right? We demand knowledge. But since I feel that, we're about to start screaming for, blood again here in this country, I want to, at least give you guys a fair warning. I'd stop this time. You have no idea what's been done. You have no idea what's coming next. And I can promise you, participating in any fighting at this point against anybody, anywhere on the planet, it'd be a very bad idea. That's your great iron teeth. You see them? Right there. How many of you are in the Navy, loaded these things up? You know what they are. General purpose iron bombs. That with the, guidance package on the back of it. That's what they call them. A couple of fins. Same thing they've been using since World War II, essentially. Same old thing. There you go. Another iron tooth. Right there. He's got a bunch of iron teeth in that. I mean, I showed you back at the beginning of the page, a foot-long piece of steel, razor sharp. Imagine that flying through your wall at like 2,000 feet per second and slicing you to pieces, yeah? Or slicing your daughter to pieces, or your son to pieces, or your wife to pieces. That's what those things do, guys. And, no, it's not surgical. When they say we're doing a surgical strike, that's a joke. You see the guidance package? Same old bomb. They probably had that since Vietnam, in stockpile. They just retrofit them with newer guidance systems. That's all. They serve the purpose. They're dropping iron teeth on people, eating them up. See the fields out there? That's B-52. Yeah. There you go. More of it. Yeah. Oh, again, anybody in the Navy, some of those, I think that's J-dams right there. There's a bunch of iron teeth laid out there, ready to deliver some freedom, right? You guys? I mean, I'm sure they want to hear about Jesus when we show up after that, right? I hate to do this to you, but your pastors won't. There's some more iron teeth. That's a big one, too. These are pretty expensive. These are laser-guided guys here. This is the end result of it, though, the ones that don't go off, You're dropping them on people like this, a lot of times. That's the really friggin' messed up part about this. Yeah. And I understand, the argument that they would do it to us, too. I get all of that. I'm not telling you that, that wouldn't be the case. What I'm telling you is it's not our job to be in the middle of this. If Jesus Christ of Nazareth is your king, right? And king of your heart, then you should know better than to be in the middle of this. I shouldn't have to tell you anything, and supporting it is wrong. I don't care what your pastor says. There's some more. These are what they dig up, years later. They still go off every now and then, still kill people, after, they've been dropped 70 years ago, That's, I think, something they dug up recently in Germany. And now, remember I told you the nails of brass, yeah? See, the greatest killing that had took place was in World War I, and that was because of these things you're looking at right here. And they pretty much revolutionized and came from where? Guess where? The United States. Yep. There's your nails of brass, guys. So you have your iron teeth. Remember, this beast, this fourth beast, exceeding dreadful, that means scarier than scary. Yeah? With great iron teeth and nails of brass, well, it ain't talking about any other place than this country right here. And there's the man that revolutionized it right there. Hiram Maxim, that's his name. Dr. Maxim. He was what they'd call an inventor. He was an engineer. He was, one of those guys I keep telling you about. An engineer. He built idols. Yeah, basically. And the machine gun was one of them. He was a very intelligent person, is what I'm getting at. He was in Europe on a vacation at one point, and somebody had made a joke that, if he wanted to make money, he was thinking of something new to get into. If you wanted to make money, you need to find a way to get the Europeans to kill each other faster. Yeah, and it was a joke, if you want to make money over here. So he sat down and he came up with the idea after hearing some evil thing like that. See what Jesus said about watching the words that come out of your mouth, by the way? You think Jesus was kidding about this? He said, watch the things that come out of your mouth, and you never know the consequences of something like that, And he said, out of the mouth proceeds all of these evil thoughts, or, out of the heart, through the mouth. And you don't know who else over there may hear something wicked like that, and they may actually take it serious. Well, that's exactly what this man did. When he heard that, I think it caused a ding, a light bulb. That, remember what Paul warned you about? Sorry, it's not a UFO, when he said, be careful, even Satan can come as an angel of light. Well, that was what he was talking about right here. The guy had a light bulb over his head, and then he thought, oh, that's a great idea. And as smart as he was, this is what he came up with, the Maxim machine gun. And this was sold to every army, just about it, that I know of, on the planet. And it's still used. The basic design is still in use today. It's just changed. In the United States, when I was in, it was the M2. It's big 50 caliber, World War II 30 caliber versions. This killed more people than any other thing man had ever invented right here. This was the millions that died in the First World War. You're looking at the man who is responsible for making the idol that did it, and he didn't apparently feel too guilty. He actually left the United States at that time because I'm guessing the King of England knighted him and made him like a knight for the invention that he gave the British Army for him working with Vickers. There was a company called Vickers, so it was Vickers and Maxim, and it was their machine gun. But they sold it to the Germans. That was the whatever it was, the MG. I can't remember MG whatever version number they had. It was the same gun. They just gave them their own numbers, and he sold it to the American Army, and we revolutionized that, and that became us. Yeah, right here, the nails of brass. This is the beginning of it. There it is, and millions of people dead at the end of that war for nothing, basically because this man wanted to make some money. The man also, he was all about idols. He knew his customers, If you look into him, he made the machine gun, and go look into this. It is true. He also did the electric curling iron for if you can believe that. He was a businessman on time. He was a smart, engineer. He was definitely money oriented, and he knew, hey, I get the, toys for the boys and toys for the girls. They wanted a machine gun, and she wants something to fix her hair, so he made her a curling iron. And yeah, this is like, I'm not kidding you. This is that simple. This is why Jesus told us not to do these kind of things. Yeah, nails of brass right there. Yep, nails of brass, still to this day. Nails of brass. Nails of brass. I'm making a point here to you guys. That's what I'm trying to do. So, you have no doubt. Nails of brass. Nails of brass. Nails of brass. So, between those things right there, yeah. You can tread down the entire earth. And that's exactly what they've done. Tread down the entire earth with those great iron teeth and the nails of brass. Now again, I'm not telling you that any other country wouldn't have done the same. I'm simply pointing out the fact that no other country did.